All right, we're live. Now it's recording. Okay. All right, look, Gio, we're going to do a bit of sales training. This is not going to be a full-on breakdown of the entire setter closer process. This is specifically on one thing, because a lot of the people in this network that work with us, that work with some of the sponsors that we work with, we have a good funnel, right? They have an ad, the investor, they see an ad, so they like it, it's intent based. They like what they see, they're curious, they click on that ad, they go to a sales page, they have information about the opportunity. It pikes their interest. It's clearly they're obviously looking for an investment or something like this for whatever reason at this point. They then have to schedule a call. Now they have to make the decision that they want to speak to someone, right? And so they schedule a call, and then after that page, we don't put a video prior. We put a video after, which is like they have this pre-frame video where it's like this is information about the opportunity to cap raise, right? So you've got maybe an investor call there, or like a mini webinar or something to that effect, kind of like homework that they need to like watch before the call. So then when they end up on the call, that's when our salespeople jump on the call, right? Whether it's, well, they jump on the call, they're doing their usual strategies for making sure call confirmation, right? So or the caller or the prospect to be on the call when it's scheduled, right? So they'll do things like call confirmations. They're going to do things like messaging, video messaging, emails, tech, whatever, to get and make sure that the potential investor shows up. Then they show up, and they go through their pitch. Then it's one call, it's two calls, it's three calls, and they've gone back and forth with information about the opportunity. They've looked at pitch decks, they've talked about contracts, they've talked about security and safety and all of that. So let's skip all that. But that's the journey so far. The challenge is closing, right? Especially when you've got like a fund that's like a rolling fund or it's open-ended, right? Like how do you create a sense of urgency to get an investor over the line? Like, you've got because we have investors that invest, and they're great because they're easy. It's like transactional. They just love the deal. Boom, deal happens. But then you have those investors who are still sitting on the fence, and they're shopping around, and they can't remember your company name when you sent the pitch deck to them 100 times, or they've got another investment that they're looking at, which is actually worse, has less security, is more volatile than what we're potentially offering. And they'll go for that because they haven't fully understood where they're at with us. And it's like, how do we create a sense of urgency to go for the close? And if is it something that we should be focusing on at that point, or should we try and close from the beginning? Like, I know there's lots of different thoughts about closing. Like, right? From the first phone call, or do you wait and then when it's built up to a point where, because these are big investments, these are hundreds to millions of dollars, do you then wait till the opportune moment to then start putting the pressure on and say, okay, there's a time limit. There's we have to create this sense of urgency, or it's going to run out. So it's a fear of loss. Or if you don't do it now, you're going to lose money because you've got it stuck in the markets. Or what can we do to kind of create that sense of urgency?
Well, so sounds like you've got high intent leads. That's the first thing. You've got to a point where these people are high intent, but you feel like maybe there's a breakdown in the sales process where you're not getting people to the point where you can get a decision out. So there's a lot to unpack there. So and there's a lot that I don't know, right? I would need to know to understand where the actual challenges are. So, but for the sake of the people listening, to give you some sort of context, it starts from that. Again, I'd have to look at your video sales letter, your sales copy to see whether because that's where it really starts from the first engagement. You're pre-framing the sense of urgency, right? And that can be done. The way I look at urgency is from two angles. Number one is there's going to be physical facts about the deal. So you said it's kind of open-ended, but there isn't an unlimited supply of land.
It's just relaying a good opportunity.
No, sure. But what I'm saying is there isn't an open supply of land. So at some point, the land's going to run out. He doesn't have an unlimited supply of deals.
This is development.
Here's the facts that that can be framed. That can be framed in. I'm not saying make up stuff. It's got to be real and relative to the deal. So facts about the deal, that if it subscribes at a certain dollar amount, that deal's done, and then the next deal comes on board. These are things that you can this messaging can be intertwined with your sales message. That's the first thing. Then the other side of it is that sales skill to understand, well, when they're in front of the prospect, are they doing a good job of uncovering their need, their goals, objectives, okay, and the pain points? It starts from their challenges, right? So that they can then allow them to understand the cost of inaction. Why are they talking to you? These types of things. And then when you start getting into that point, it's all about, if there's 2, 3, 4 calls that these people are having, then maybe they're not tying down, and setting expectation for a second call or a third call. But the way I always do it is I know my sales process. So first of all, if it's the first interaction, I'm going to state, look, John, this is what we want to achieve on this conversation. The next conversation, we will go over X, Y, Z, and then we'll get to the point of you'll be able to make an informed decision, and we can talk about next steps and get confirmation whether you want to move forward or not.
And that's how you'd say it. It's not just about, okay, here's some information, and hey, when should I call you back?
No,
and it's like you're getting permission to call back, but you're really positioning for the close the way you.
Yeah, because you've got to become the prize, and you've got to frame yourself as the prize or the deal of the prize, and the information and things that you do. So a lot of it, again, it's such a blanket answer.
So let's say that again. That's a strategy right there. You just said one. So let's say that. Let's break that down. There were 3 components there. It was. Yeah. We're going to go through this information, John. We're going to reschedule another call, find out where we're at, and then the third point was, because then if that's okay, then we can be in a position to move forward. Is that
because what you're doing?
How would you say that?
You're setting expectation. Okay, so you're demonstrating we've done this time and time again. We know what we're doing. So you're showing that you've got some organization, and again, a lot of this is subconscious stuff that's going on. But you're saying, okay, we've done this. We've got a map. We know what we're doing. And we're happy to help educate you to get you to the point of being able to make a decision yourself. That way, you're empowering them to make a decision. Now, the key to that is we may not be able to help you. This may not be a good fit. So you're disattaching, because to get more urgency, you actually got to go the opposite. You've got to push these people away. You're going to say, maybe this isn't the right deal for you, John. Maybe you're better off staying in the market. Maybe you're better off staying in that risk and dealing with that. And you bring it again. So once you do that, once you push away a little bit, people lean in. So again, without listening to the sales team and really breaking down their call, it's hard to say where they're going wrong. But having done this for 25 years, these are typically these nuances that you spot, and it's typically the same. They don't get commitment on the steps, and then they're scared to hear a no. So they're scared to use language like, look, John, I'm going to get you to the point of X, Y, Z. That way, you're going to be able to make a decision to whether or not it's going to be a good fit for you. And that's fine. You can let me know whether you feel like it is. But also, to note that I've got limited appointments throughout the day, and there's some other framing you can do. So you can set that second call. Here's what I'm going to have you do. You can book a call with me on the follow-up. Boom, and then I'll answer your questions, write these questions down, give them some homework, some direction. And then what I want to do is, answer the questions on a deeper level, make sure you're comfortable. And if you are, at that point, we can discuss next steps, and we can get you subscribed for the deal. How does that sound? Will that help you going through that process with me? Okay, someone says yes to that.
Let's say they say yes to that. Okay, so they're on board.
So now I can, well, then we go to the next call. And then if you're getting to the point where, because again, urgency tends to, people think it's urgency. People want to think about it. I can hold them accountable to their own word, because I said, John, you mentioned that we'd agreed to have this second conversation, and you're comfortable that my role is to get you educated so that you can make a decision either way. And it's fine, you making a decision to say this isn't the fit for you, but let's understand that I've been doing this a long time, and if it's a think about it, then maybe I've failed at my job. I've not educated you enough, or maybe there's something that's under the surface that perhaps we need to really dig in and kind of figure out together to see if we can help you overcome it. So
it's looking for those real objections.
Yeah, you're trying to uncover. When you have a conversation on that level with somebody, it's authentic, it's human, and they realize, this guy's done it before. It's not coming up with some fancy line that overcomes, I want to think about it, the wife, this, that, the other. Good qualification. If I got a guy who's an investor first, again, this is slightly different when you're moving larger amounts. I want to know that up front. Is there anyone else involved in the decision with you, John? So if there is a wife and you're going to move $500,000 to somebody's retirement account, are they going to do it without talking to their wife? Would you? So maybe you deal with that thing up front, the setter's role. Again, we're opening Pandora's box. It's so many different.
There's so many things, yeah. All right, what about, let's look at one, let's look at something that's present day. Like we had a deal, for instance, that was lost because of concerns about the market. Trump's doing this, equity markets are tanking out. They probably looked at their stock portfolio and saw that thing get chopped in, by a third or a half, depending on what they got their money in. And they're like, I had $250,000 to put somewhere. Where could I? And we were thinking this would be a fantastic opportunity for them. They decided to go somewhere else, a mutual fund that they thought would be safe and stable, or something to that effect. Either way, it wasn't what the sales guy, it wasn't where the sales guy wanted it to go. And they had felt that they had given that investor a fair amount of time. Like, they've gone through multiple calls, they've gone through a lot of Q&A. They've shared, in this particular deal, it's a development deal that those guys are working on, where it's pre-sold lots, where there's guaranteed buyer at the end. So you've got AAA client on the back end who's basically buying everything. Yeah. So it's like, you'd think that they made the case. They felt that they made the case, but then this person just decided to get cold feet and not commit.
Right. But again, it's a game of nuances, right? That's a very blanket statement, but these guys could just be flooding them, overloading them with information, getting them to a place of logic where people are moving on emotion, the cost of inaction. That's our job as a sales guys, to use the information we have, but understand that the decision's not made in that realm. There are going to be people who are information gatherers, and they're, the engineer types who, when they say they need more information, you can respect it far more than if I tell you, yeah, just send me some information. I'm just blowing you off, right? Yeah. That's the type of personality I am. So I'm not saying the information's not used, but for the most part, you still want to get me, or anyone else for that matter, to a point of getting emotional, an attachment emotionally with the cost of inaction, cost of staying still, the cost of not making a change, not solving the problem. Again, there's layers to this. So it all starts from having your sales process correct in the first place, starting at the right place. You can't, cooking's probably a bad example because you can kind of get, flary with it, but you need a map, right? And you're not going to get to the place without the right directions. Same in sales. So you've got to understand, you've got to go through that discovery. You've got to go through that, understand why they're there, what they're looking to achieve, what's the problem with their current setup in the markets, why not stay there? What have they done to try and figure it out? And then from there, you're going to get timeline, priority, and then you can understand whether you are talking to a high intent lead, and then you'll get more chance to convert that lead, because then you can use the things that they're telling you to hold them accountable. There's nothing wrong with challenging somebody on a sales call. Okay. Just politely, respectfully. And you can even just say, hey, if you don't mind, I can respectfully challenge what you said there, Sav, and because I just want to make sure that you're
that's a good line. I want to respectfully challenge what you've just said.
You mentioned that you wanted to get X, Y, Z, and Z, but then we're getting to the point now where you got to take some action, and for whatever reason, there's other challenges. So, is this what's going on, or is there anything that we can maybe again uncover, dig in together? I always want to make it like I'm not challenging them. In essence, you are, but you're not going head on with somebody. But you're making it a collaborative process. No, exactly. Yeah. So what can we do together to get you through this? And even if I'd much rather hear a no, this is not for me because of X, Y, Z, than let me think about it. And I'm chasing my tail for 3 or 4 phone calls, because you've lost the power then, and then you've lost the status frame. And there's always a battle between the frame, the power frame, and it's going on in every conversation, always in the sales environment.
So in terms of finding out whether or not someone's really serious, then it's really making sure that you're constantly temperature checking to see if they can hold themselves accountable, and you have to specifically ask for it.
Yeah, well, you got to ask for the business, and not be scared to be told no. But again, it goes back to setting these things in place, in motion early in the sales process. Okay, testing out, finding out their time frames. Asking them, why are they even doing this? Like, why not just carry on as you are? Or if they've looked at real estate for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years and never pulled the trigger, well, why is that? I'd like to know that. Is there other things? Is there an FA involved? Is there other parties involved? Because all we have is our time, right? Mm-hmm. That's our commodity. Our knowledge obviously is other, but we only have our time. So I want to always defend my time, and I want to make sure that, I'm having an honest and open conversation. Again, you can start a conversation with that. Hey, listen, John, I'm absolutely fine here. This may not work out to be a fit for you. Typically, I'm booked back to back throughout the day, right? So I'm absolutely happy to give you my time and attention and walk you through this project. All I ask from you is that, we can have an open and honest conversation around the benefits of this and where this may possibly fit in, and fill some gaps for you. If it doesn't, all I'm after is you letting me know it's not a fit, and that's fine. But if obviously it makes sense, we'll discuss next steps. Are you good with that? You're getting a commitment, that's a pre-framed commitment in many ways. It's not as hard as these guys saying that, you know what I mean? I've heard some really corny ways to do that.
Yeah. How do you do that without sounding like?
Well, the way I did it,
Like
I don't think that
cheesy.
sounds corny,
Yeah.
but if someone's, I've seen these ones that will say, John, this conversation typically goes 3 ways. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Well, I can't accept. Come on, man. I've said the same thing. I've used the same upfront agreement is what it's called if you want to get technical with it. But I've used it in such a normal, conversational way. And also within that, I'm framing myself as the prize, that I'm busy, which I am, you know that. But I'm also using, I'm not lying. I'm never lying, but I'm also using to my advantage. I want to make these people think, okay, this guy's time, I want to respect his time. He's got information. He's got the background. He's got access to what I want. And he's also letting me be understood and heard. And he seems that he's actually disattached and he's not begging for my business. And you know what I mean? There's a balance in that.
All right. What about this then? So let's say you're in the second call, and this is right before you're trying to close the whole way, right? So you're closing on them taking ownership of their own next steps, right? You're saying, look, you've got to, if we do this, are you going to do that, right? Is this going to be enough for you? But let's say they start taking you around the garden path, and by that I mean they're saying, oh, Gio, let me see you've given them a plethora of information, a massive amount, and it's a ton of stuff to go through. And that's everything that should be there. It should be enough to satisfy as most due diligence. But then they want to go beyond it. They find the one thing that's missing. Oh, well, I want third-party audited accounts. Can I speak to the CEO? Can I speak to references? Can I speak to, do you know what I mean? Like, so they start to ask these questions. Let's look at those 3 as an example. Like, what would obviously you have to provide information because they need to be informed. This is a huge amount of money that they're going to drop. But how do you just stop just sort of pandering to it and just giving them, and then at the end of that cycle, them still saying no? Like, how do you make it so that when you provide the next thing, they're much more deeply committed into the deal? And if you are going to bring in a head honcho or a CEO or someone above you, how do you then position that in a way that, listen, if I do this, I'm expecting you to do a deal?
From experience, I would typically say these are stalling tactics, and that you can diffuse them and disarm them. And you can say, okay, got it, no problem. So you want to see some referrals? Can I ask, you minimize it, ask what they need the referrals for. What would you ask them? Because sometimes there's something more going on, something deeper. So you can try and dig past it. It's credibility and trust. And then there's not enough pain for them to make a change, right? So you got to really uncover that. And it's very hard I could give you a blanket answer for a lot of that stuff, but most of it comes from the discovery stage where it's not, people haven't gone deep enough. But again, you've also got to have permission to go through that and explain and pre-frame that to say, listen, I'm going to need to ask you some questions. Here's the reason why. Right? Maybe not as straight as that, but because I want to really truly understand your situation, what you're looking for, where you're looking to go, and where this would fit in. And that way I can give you the figure. So that way, a lot of this stuff I don't get a lot of objections when I'm selling because I do that part up front, and you'll be surprised. Typically I will close and ask the guy, are you comfortable with these next steps? The guy says yes. I'll say, well, okay. Why does this make you comfortable? Or why do you feel like it's going to be a good fit for you? Why do you feel like this is the right deal for you? Almost kind of get them to kind of really close me and have final stages of the deal. But it all goes back to that discovery part. So the more you can find out about them, and the deeper you can use their own their own statements, words, their own, how did you put it? They can take ownership of it. I think that's so well put. You've got to get somebody to take ownership of their decision, and that is standing still, which is a decision. And what goes with that, the consequences that go with that, or actually taking action, right?
Yeah. Okay. So without people sort of taking on, there's a lot of people they'll come across, they'll kind of give themselves a persona. It's easier to kind of like lump salespeople into certain boxes, right? Oh, he's a hard closer. That person's a soft closer, or that guy just mirrors the guy, or that guy just generates excitement and hopes that, by doing so much, amazing sort of talking about something so enthusiastically for so long, eventually someone's just going to bend over for it, right? But I think the process that we're looking at here kind of knocks those out the park, because if you've gone through your discovery correctly without just saying, here's information, let me just keep bombarding you with the next piece of information you want. It's you've really questioned them, quizzed them on like, okay, so you're in the market for an investment. Yeah. You've obviously seen the ad, you've seen the opportunity. Why do you think this is a good fit for you? Like, what have you done prior to this? What kind of investments?
What's going on there when they start verbalizing that?
Yeah, because maybe people are looking to, I mean, one of the biggest things that we're trying to do is find out if someone's actually liquid and how much they're liquid for. And we're trying to get that information because that's like mission number one. Like, do they have enough money for this thing? And so once that's done, then it's like this mad rush to just get information across. Like, okay, well, let's get you the contracts. Let's get you this. Before you just throw stuff, which they have to get anyway. It's just to then start getting those commitments, those micro commitments. Are they? Would you even call those micro commitments?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You're getting micro commitments, and like you mentioned earlier, I think you used the word like testing the temperature, which is a temp check, right? As you're going through, is this right for you? You know, what makes you think? And then you're also testing. Okay, have they moved before? Have they taken action before? Is this a priority? Why is this a priority for them now to take care of this? All these little things that you're testing along the way is always good. And then, yeah, go on.
Let's get into the next stage then. Because I'm like, all right, we're here, but we've done this a lot, right?
Yeah.
We've done this a lot. Now, this is you great advice, but that's still vanilla. What happens when you've done all that and they're still on the edge and they're still freaking, listen, I'm still looking at something else. I need to do some more due diligence, or leave it with me. I've got to see if I'm liquid. I've got to get liquid suddenly. Or they start basically going around, or you know what, I'm really just concerned about, you know, the scams out there, or just they start coming up with stuff. It doesn't matter. They just start coming up with stuff. And it's stopping the close. And you know you got to close before the end of the month because you're trying to get that money in to the fund. The fund needs it. They need to do what they need to be doing with the money. Also, it's important for you too because that's how you earn your salary, right? That's how you earn your wages. How do you, without killing the deal, without sounding desperate, and also without sounding too like as if you don't care about them, like how do you maintain the status quo where you can keep the pressure on, even though you know you can't close right now because they're just not going to move? Because if you push hard, they're probably definitely not going to do it. If you let go completely, they'll forget about you and they'll start speaking to the next salesperson. You know you don't have a firm grip on them, but you know they're still interested. And I find that a lot of our guys find themselves in that position. Like, they've done everything. I don't understand. It's a great investment. They know it's a great investment. They're still not moving, but I don't want to push them because then they'll run away. And then if I don't keep on them, they're going to run away anyway. So you're in this kind of like this weird, this balancing act.
Like, no man's land at that point. But again, I know I keep harping on about this. It would always be, you don't get there if you've done things the right way for the most part, right? So you're always going to have to go back and look at the how you got there. And then there is a part of the art in being in sales is absolutely not having that commission breath and that desperation, right? It's the same when you're out there with women in relationships or at the bar, right? When you're begging and, you know, needy and all of these things that we've all done in the past, you look at your results. Yeah. And that's no good for selling. So you have to be disattached to the sale, not to the point where, because you are right, there's a fine line between somebody's, well, he doesn't care about my business. Mm-hmm. But there's also, you've got to be okay pushing it away. Like, and there's ways of doing that. There's techniques that you can use, like the push-pull technique is, you know, well, look, if they're giving you a bit of a challenge when it matters, you got to be okay to let it go. And that's okay. You can't close everybody. There's no magic bullet that closes everybody, dude. That's the other part. So you might say, listen, you know, I sense some frustration there, John. Sounds like you're almost trying to, you know, come up with ways not to do this. So, you know, maybe this isn't the right fit for you. Maybe, you know, maybe we just kind of put this on ice and maybe I'll come back to you with another one.
To say no?
Yeah, and then let it simmer a little bit. And this is the key. You've got to give it a nice pause there. Okay. And you let, listen, you know, or maybe, you know, maybe you do come on board and you get these fixed returns and you get rid of them and you bring up the things that they mentioned they didn't want to happen, right? Maybe you do this. I don't know, John. What do you suggest as a next step from here? Let them, and then just back away. And then, you know, if they do say yes, more than likely they're going to close. Now, to go to your point about all this information, yes, there's contracts, yes, there's due diligence, But I would want to be going for some upfront. And again, I would make that stuff secondary. I'll try to make sure that stuff isn't, if you're selling around that, you're in trouble. You want to get agreement and figure out the sales process to a way you can get them to sign on the line originally with some type of commitment, and then dig a little deeper into the deal.
Well, let me ask you this then. Let's say you've got an investor, and this actually happened. It was a she was very interested in the investment opportunity. She seemed somewhat experienced in investing so far. Now, it turns out in the end, she invested her money with a competitor, and it was a lesser, actually, and we're not just saying it was actually a worse off project. It wasn't a good project. If you compare apples to apples, it's different, and it's just more risk assigned to it. So clearly the other side did a better job with closing and bringing them over the line. But here's the trouble. The conversations sounded as if the deal was done on our end, for our thing. And you had a situation where it got to the point where they were already negotiating the contracts. And well, you know, it's a 3-year hold, but I want to be able to exit in a year. I need to have that comfort if I can exit in a year. And so there was a mad rush to figure out if that could be done, and if the contract could be changed to basically have someone come in for a 12-month term. And that happened. Lawyers were spoken to, top brass was spoken to, and it was put together. And it was delivered to the investor, and the investor was expected to close. And then turns out 3 days later, when our sales guys were effectively chasing in the wire, and here's the wire details, that person turns around and says, I went to your competitor.
Well, let me say this. What does that sound like to you? That sounds like us as whoever's offering. We're desperate young pup trying to get laid in the bar. Yeah. There's my point exactly. I would say, no, sorry, these are 3 years. You create the price. All about framing. John, we've got a ton of investors. We're a 3-year hold for a reason. We want to, because the results that we get are more important than just taking in money. Again, you're showing that you're okay to tell her to pound sand. And it makes it, because if you're coming across desperately like you need the money, which the way you explained, that's how it sounded to me.
Because the other company offered a year exit, but in fact, we didn't know that at the time.
No, well, you don't even know if that to be true, because these customers are getting more and more, especially if they see somebody that's begging to give them the business and desperate. Who's got the power in that scenario? Who's got the status frame? Who's winning it? You guys or her? She's winning it. She knew it, and she's very good at negotiating. I mean, maybe she's an attorney, like a good negotiator. But good job on her.
The worst deal. Yeah. She didn't read the contract. It wasn't actually. It was an option to exit after a year, but it was written in such a way that you couldn't. In fact, you would be stuck in for at least 2 years.
Right. Well, let me ask you this: is there any? And this is an idea that's come to my head that could add an extra layer of commitment and move away the DD part where you're getting lost in information. Because sometimes these deals that are complex, that do need a lot of due diligence when it comes to real estate deals and stuff like that, there is a time where that can call the deal off. So what I would put in, if it's legal enough, I would put in, say, $1,000 or $5,000 deposit on agreement, get them to agree it in principle, pre-DD, like with a contingent of the DD working out. They put some skin in the game, okay? And then there's more commitment, and then you deal with the DD, and then they're on your terms, John. You know what I mean? So
like if you want to get contracts changed, okay, listen, we're happy.
Let's say you agree, you're an investor, you agree with me, you want to do business. Okay, great. The next step is, John, you've got to put down a $5,000 deposit to hold your tranche. Okay, then we open up DD for you. Then we get you and your attorneys if you need to look at it.
And that's a difficult one. I don't know, man. That's
not if that's legal, but that could add in an extra layer.
I don't think you could. Can you? As long as it's a refundable deposit, it's legal.
Cool. It's almost like an EMD, right? Yeah.
If you say I mean, look, you could take the position. All right, Mr. Jones. We get a lot of people coming through our Facebook ads. So you kind of turn the tables on them because they're coming in. I don't know if I should trust you because I saw you on a Facebook ad. Where it's more like we can turn the tables immediately and say, actually, we don't know if we can trust you. Do you know the amount of window shoppers we get here? The time wasters, tire kickers. If you're serious about investing, we have a fully refundable deposit. We could even set it up with a third-party escrow, and it's like have it set up there, and say we take a $5,000. $5,000. I know you're serious. We're going to go through the entire length of this. We're going to go all the DD, blah, blah, blah. But then the only trouble with that is when people are talking about, well, I was going to move money from my self-directed IRA, for instance.
On a credit card. I mean, it's just a quick idea to say that maybe you're adding an extra step after. What you're doing is you're simplifying the pitch in terms of you're really going over a high level, the big benefits, what it can do for them, and you're keeping all of the deep level due diligence, which slows it up and gets it from a emotional place to a logical place, that's stalling a sale, right? So you got to figure out how can we get that sale where it's short, concise, to the point. Remember, the croc brain is driving these decisions, right? It's fight or flight. So this is what's going on in an interaction. And if you keep it super long and overly, that's why it's going to be so hard to close people, and it's hard to get urgency.
I mean, look, getting a micro, like getting them to say yes and handing over money is like a major. That would be major, because if they're already sent you some money, they're going to send you more. For the
of course, but they're going to at least say, right, now you're getting rid of, I've got to do this, do that. Say, right, and you're telling them the next steps at this point. Right, now what we do, within 24 hours, we're going into DD. So you figure that structure out, and they do the due diligence. You give them a time frame, then we've got to do this due diligence, boom, boom, boom. And you've got the timeline, and it's mapped out for them. So that becomes part of the sale. It's not, we're going to present, then give you the information, you go away and figure it out. It's, we're going to present, you're going to take your slot, then we're going to help you, hold you by the hand and walk you through DD and get everything done to the point of, if things don't check out at that point, you can always back out and get your money back. No problem. But at least you're getting a commitment. So once somebody's done
that's a powerful way to do it. I don't know. I feel like I think if I was to go to the sponsor, like that one of the sponsors that we're working with and the people that we've placed candidates with, if we were to say, hey, this is a cool strategy for you guys to implement, I think they'd get stuck they'd get stuck trying to make that the sale. That would be the biggest hurdle, and it would just be for the 5K or whatever. And I feel that is a great idea. I think that if the business was bigger, that could be adopted. And if they had if you're Charles Schwab, all day long, you could totally do that. And people would just accept that, right? Oh, it's part of the process. Look at this massive institution, Fidelity, something like that, right?
If you do a real estate deal, a normal, active real estate deal, if you're going to close, you've got to put an earnest money deposit down. You've got contingencies, and you've got your period of inspections and everything within a normal transaction. So it's not new to real estate investors. It's something, it's language they understand. Okay. So it's, I don't
calling it earnest money.
Well, yeah. It's almost like an earnest money, but once somebody's got their earnest money, it's just a show of faith. That's really all it is. Yeah. And do you want to be having all your earnest money out and having to collect it back? If you're not fully committed, you're not doing it. It's a good bloody test to see if somebody's committed to the deal.
Yeah, you're gonna find out real quick.
You're able to push through the due diligence, And then if they're back and forth, well, John, look, you've obviously put your money down for a reason. Like, why? We're going to help you get these questions answered and tick off the boxes for you, so you can get to the point of getting to the close, right? So you can get your position solidified, X, Y, Z. I mean, again, this is just off the cuff idea.
Yeah.
And one of the other ways to really, I'd have to look at your sales process, really see how it's presented, figure out what information can be kept back, right? And how that process can be managed to navigate them through to due diligence, right? So maybe there's some initial conversation done up front. There's some expectations set. The DD's done up front. Then the second filter comes through, and then something's explained on the back end that maybe you've got to keep something back as, so that there's a reason for them to get on the second call. You've knocked out DD. That's another way to flip it on its head. And you do your due diligence up front, and you see how.
All right, so here's how we're gonna do it. We're gonna go through the deck now, Q&A, and then on our second scheduled call, we're going to reserve the financial discussion and contract discussion or something for that one. But we won't get to that call unless we cover every point in this one. So then the third call is ideally we're going to be in a place where you can take action, Mr. Jones.
Yeah. How many calls are you guys typically doing in the minute to close?
To be honest with you, a lot of these guys are feeling like it's a one call close and it's just information gathering for the next 3 until the deal's done. And they have had some deals that are like that, where it's just been, I love this idea. It's really good. let me see the information. That's in the second call. It's the follow-up. The third call, it's usually with a three-way with a senior or the CEO or someone else to kind of help handhold that deal to the door. And that's it. The fourth call is really just, all right, when's the wire coming? So and the lead time, is looking like 4 weeks. We thought it would be around 3 weeks, but it seems like it's 4 to potentially even 6 weeks for a deal to close. Our closest deal will be around 4.
I still like the idea of putting some type of time frame in there. Once they say they want agreement, they look in conceptually, John, is this something that is a good fit for you? Why? Yep, they get agreement. Okay, perfect. The next step is you're going to have 3 days or a week, 7 days to do your due diligence and go through all of the documentation. You compile all your things, and then once you've gone through, until you've gone through that, you won't get your allocation. So we've got a limited amount of things, and we understand that sometimes this may be the case where you decide it's not for you. That's fine. All we ask is that you can set expectations.
We've got to set up scarcity. We need to set.
Yeah.
I think for that to even work, you have to define scarcity from the get-go.
Yeah.
Because it is a rolling fund. It's an open fund. No, it's not open. There is a cap, but it is rolling, which means it's not really tied to any particular project.
Right.
But they don't know that. So you can, I guess, start with, we have a lot, there's only a certain allocation that we're working with.
What are you raising for this one? 10 mil for that project. You're raising 7 for that. So you can say this is a $7 million project. As you can imagine, John, it's pretty easy for us to raise $7 million. Yes, okay, good. So look, what we're looking for, and whether this is a fit for you or not, I don't know, but these things move pretty quickly, okay? I'm sure you can understand that. Yes, okay, great. Excellent. Well, here's what we figured out to work best for you to get to the point of getting, being able to make a decision. Number one is understanding the financial documents or whatever. So maybe you do that up front. You go over all of that stuff with them. Boom, 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 boom. Then you might want to, maybe you can do this discovery the other way around, right? And get the information out up front. I've had a lot of success lately getting the information. I flipped it where we'd go some stuff that we're doing, some rollovers from IRAs, right? We would go into the product first and then or the discovery and then go into
walk us through the whole picture.
Then after the money, right?
Walk me through your sales process. Maybe we can glean something.
Well, I mean, it's again, I flipped it on its head. I'll go in and say, listen, let me understand. Are you trying to understand the why or the how? Or maybe a bit of both, okay? And I get some identification of that while I'm looking to understand the how. Okay, so then I just know I need to focus on that part.
The why,
and even if they say I want to understand the why and the how, so okay, perfect. Well, let's get the how out first, because that part's really easy. The mechanics, and I cover all of the mechanical stuff. X, Y, Z. We're going to move, help you move funds or liquidate funds to cash. We're going to do a tax-deferred, penalty-free move from your left pocket to your right pocket. We help you set up an IRA, self-directed, in your name, control. We move the funds. Takes us about 5 to 7 days. Once the funds arrive in your self-directed IRA, you're in cash. We then go over the consultation with you, and then you'll do the investment that way. So that's basically how I do that side of it. Then I'll say, well, let's back up a couple. So any questions around that specifically? No, take care of all those questions, the fees, the time frames, all that stuff. Good, that's out the way. Now let's really back up, because that part's simple. I want to really understand. I'm always curious to know why you think this is a good fit for you and why you feel like, and then let them unload, and then boom, and then I can go back to using that as the emotion. Then I say, okay, perfect. Well, based on what you told me, this and what you've just said, where this would fit in, unless you have any other questions, I think the next logical step would be for us to go ahead and start the paperwork. Are you comfortable with that? Yeah, I am. Okay, so I'm sorry, say that again. What did you say? Oh, yeah, I am. Okay, boom. I'll do a little double. I get them to say it twice. Are you sure? Are you absolutely positive? Most people say, why are you asking them that? I said, because I'm not scared to lose a sale. So are you absolutely positive that this is what you want to do? Yes, I am. Okay, wonderful. So here's what we do next. Then I take a different language. It's very neutral at the start, and but when I get there, I'm like, certainty. This is what certainty is. I'm now going to lead them down the path, and I'm going to be in control of this at this point. Here's what we need to do. Boom, we need to do due diligence. You've got 4 days, bam, bam, bam. But again, it's difficult if they've got to do the wire at some point in the future. What is it that they need to see on this deal before they send the funds and the wire? What are they got to look at? Like, how in depth is the DD?
It's 3 contracts, a subscription agreement, and all Reg D 506.
They got to have their attorney look at the contracts.
They can have their attorney look at the contracts. So they don't always.
John, do you have an attorney?
Suggest that they do, but they don't always do that.
Do you have an attorney? No. Okay. Have you ever looked at a contract before? Is this something you've done before? You're going to be, if I send you this contract, you're going to be, a fish out of water. So again, there's some stuff that maybe these guys aren't qualifying that. Well, I'm just sending it over with the hope that this guy's going to come back and close himself. You've managed that process. Okay, John, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to get you on my calendar for tomorrow. I'm going to send the contract now. Open up your email. You got the contract. Perfect. Let's get that over. Or what's your attorney's name? I've CC'd you both in. When can we get a call with the attorney? Do you want to give me his number? I can go, whatever. There's loads of ways around that. Again, I don't know what the typical process looks like in that deal, right? Until I dive into that deal and see.
You're gonna be diving in real soon.
No, for sure. Yeah. Then you can figure out, okay, well, how do we get this over the line? Like, how do we knock out the challenges that maybe we're causing ourselves because of the sales process and not knowing to see these things as challenges and roadblocks? But if we can say and give them confidence that we know what we're doing, we know what we need to do, because they need to read that contract, right? Or they've got to understand the contract.
They've got to understand.
And if they don't have an attorney and they don't want to pay for an attorney, then we do I would do a screen share.
So the guy should basically, the sales team should walk the investor through the contract.
Yeah, you should do a
instead of just sending it and kind of crossing their fingers, they should walk them through it.
Pre-record it on Loom or something like that, walking through the contract.
Okay.
Do it once, and then you can just share it with the same
pre-recorded on Loom.
Yeah, get your attorney to walk through that contract, right?
Oh yeah,
on Loom, and then you've got an extra piece of resource that you can say, John, look at this Loom video. This walks you through the contract, the critical points of the contract, and just in case it's going to help your attorney for one. If you've got one, or if you don't have an attorney, it's going to help you. But obviously, we've put that together, our attorney for you. So use that as you will. But this is really important. Boom, that's what I would do as well, and that might help to speed things up.
I don't know how good our attorney's one of those kind of like, well, I say our attorney, their attorney, because I've seen him. I wouldn't say he's the most camera-friendly type of individual, so it may have to be.
Him, maybe it's something that's done by somebody else.
Maybe the CEO could walk through it. Maybe on a Loom. Yeah, because they can define that. Or just someone senior, it doesn't matter. As long as it's accurate.
As long as it's accurate and it's signed off by the attorney, get it done and then
because this applies to all kinds of capital raises. It's like, because everyone's going through the same process when it comes to finding an angel investor, a real estate investor. It doesn't matter. It's the same process.
Well, I'll tell you this, the real people are going to go put that effort in, right? So the job is of the sales guys not to fill the pipeline up with people that are never going to do it in the first place. Because all these things are excuses because that wasn't ever, probably these people shouldn't have got through. Any high-level sales guy is going to be able to fill with these people. I'm not to knock your sales team, but I would hazard a guess that stuff can be sniffed out early, and these guys were never real in the first place. And if control was taken and there was a disattachment to the sale from the sales guy, he'd probably have more credibility, and he'd be able to stand them up a little bit more in a polite way, and in a respectfully challenging way, like I said earlier.
Yeah. I think it's like people are good, and they get comfortable with a certain way, like an autopilot way in which they've operated before, and if they're successful, then they're successful.
Well, here's the thing with that. That's why you're going to get. This is the problem with the sales industry in its entirety. Is when you're in it, by default, you're going to make money. Like just any idiot can if you're in it long enough, and just the numbers pay you.
You stay the course, you're going to do deals.
Numbers pay you. So then that makes you believe in maybe you don't even think you've got a lack of skill or ability, and that can be misleading, and then people get closed-minded to learn another way to do something, right? Which I'm making money. Well, you could be making 4 times the money if you had the skill set, right, to do it. So then the issue becomes these people can only sell a certain way. So and these people that are in that pipeline, maybe they could have been closed with a higher level of skill.
Yeah.
And those guys are never going to close them. They're only ever going to close the people that are going to do it anyway. Some people will always do it regardless, even with a bad salesperson. Some people, the right people, you've got to be very, very bad to fuck up somebody that's determined to buy, right? I've had some calls, I won't share, but they, I would have hung up 10 times on these salespeople and some of the training stuff I've done for people. And yet these people were so adamant in buying. I'm shocked that they bought, absolutely shocked, but they would have bought from anybody. And it was horrific how they bought and how, but anyhow, that's probably
all right. Well, listen, I think, number one, you're hired, like you're coming in and you're gonna go through all the different sponsors that we work with, and dissect it. But look, I think also, I think this is the beginning, I guess, like the intro of a sales training program that I think you're going to be putting together. You know, I think
we're going to be collaborating on that and building it, and I'll be spearheading that.
Yeah, and it's going to be very, very useful. I think we're going to cover everything and anything out there. You've been doing it for a long time. I've been involved with sales for a long time. You are what I've always called a more technical salesperson, a more skillful salesperson. I think that the difference between two different like fighters, right? I feel like I'm like, I'll try and just go for, what's a good way to explain it? I'll just try and I'll throw hands. I'll just throw hands. I'm that guy who just does it enough, and then it somehow just becomes successful because of the sheer effort I put into it, right? Yeah. Just through, just by constantly bludgeoning something. But I think you have always been a far more technical salesperson. You focus more on the skill, but you've also made it, you also put it in a way that is, or describe it in a way that is, it can actually be transferred to somebody else, because everything you just explained, like I get, like just asking for those commitments, getting the investor or the prospect to take ownership of their decision, explaining the steps that you're going to take to the close. Like, don't even shy away from the close from the first phone call. Mr. Jones, we're going to be doing this, and then here's where we're going to see where you're at. And the time frame that we're going to do this in is like this, 3 weeks. Okay. So you're giving them,
commit to the process of going through educating themselves in the deal to get to the point of a decision, to make an informed decision, versus you're not asking them to commit to buying the deal there and then. Most salespeople, they're trying to sell whatever it is they're selling up front, and the language they use is almost like, I want agreement now.
Yeah.
Well, I'm never looking for that. I'm looking for agreement to walk through the process together. And I think you can use your fighting analogy. Mayweather, if you look at a guy that's a brawler, okay, all he can do is he's a one-trick pony. I'm not saying that. There are a lot of salespeople like that, and they can sell one way. And imagine how much money is getting left on the table when they can only sell to one type of person, right? That relates with that way. So Mayweather is relying on, like,
you're hoping and praying that person's going to fall into your funnel,
into your category. I've always been of the mindset of, well, if I can adjust to the person in front of me and realize that they're all human, so there's a consistency in the way that humans act and react and all these things, and then I can try to talk in their language and their mode of buying, right? Their buying mode. That gives me a better chance with more people. It widens the net. It's like Mayweather, as I say, he can fight somebody, a pressure fighter, or he can fight forward, he can fight going backwards, he's got everything, right? That's where I'm always trying to be that way in a sales call. So I don't want to, make it about me and my stuff. I'm trying to make it about them and lead them, basically be a position where I can help them reflect on their reasoning for being in the call and their reason for wanting to make a change. It's always about them, and how can I help facilitate that for them?
Yeah.
And if I can't, I'm okay. I'm okay with it.
All right, listen. On that mic drop, on that bombshell, let's call it a day for this. I think this is going to be very useful for people in our network. And I think that it's just the first of many training videos to come. I think this is a never-ending. It's not going to be like a little course, like a five video course. I think we're going to have to figure out some kind of a mastermind, because like the examples that I had today, everyone's got their own specific, because everyone feels like their problem's unique, right? Or their situation is unique. Well, my funnel does this, but my sales guys are like this. Well, they've done so great last year. Why is it not working this year? Like, what's wrong with the product? It's got to be the product. It's got to be the tariffs. It's got to be the market. The equity market's the bottom of that. It's got to be everything. And while a lot of that has a factor into everything, that has to be factored into everything. There's still ways.
Yeah, there is. And I'll tell you, it's nuances, my friend. It's typically nuances in the language from the individual sales guy, because a concept is very blanket. and it can sound like they feel like they're doing that same thing, but that's why you have to. It's like you got to look at everything with a microscope. When I go in and do a check on somebody's sales process or their sales call, I've got to listen. Like somebody said, I don't know how good somebody's at selling unless I really listen to them and what they've done from the first interaction. And then if there's two different people on that lead, what has that original sales guy done or the setter done? How has he created the mindset of the person to get it ready for the next guy? All that is a whole nother level of depth. But anyway,
we're going to have to, I think to my point, it's not just going to be a couple of videos. It's going to be more like a mastermind, like coaching thing where people are kind of live interacting and we can kind of work with people. All right, cool. Let's call it a day, and I will see you in the next video.